at Cuesta. I do have an AA here from Cuesta College in Social and Behavioral Science, and I am certified from Fresno State University in anti-racism. I just wanted to give a little land acknowledgement, obviously. These are some things that could really help kind of guide y'all's if y'all were to want to use this down the line, or as a beginning contact point to wanting to gain more knowledge on the subject, or if you're an educator building a curriculum, or just if you're a student who just wants to understand. So obviously land acknowledgements are very important. And we need to acknowledge the past MEChA student activists and the mothers, the mamas who wanted to make a difference and demand a relevant education for Mexican Americans. And they also demanded a really important in a historical context. A lot of students and their mothers and their families, they wanted Mexican American students to be tracked into college courses early on from high school, so they could go into university and obtain higher education. So just in context, there was a lot of student walkouts during the 60s, 70s, and sometimes extended over onto the 90s. So we here it's very important in this space that I want to make sure that we acknowledge that we're all learning, that, you know, even as people of color or whatever our backgrounds might be, we do have racial biases inside of us. And something to understand here as students, it's that really priorities and hierarchy are very pervasive. You know, schools and universities, they're microcosms of our society. This is according to Dr. Cisneros from the education department here at University of Texas. It's very important here that also we acknowledge that this is a space where student voices should be represented, from preschool to university to the lowest form of any, you know, even if you're pre-K, you know, having that voice is very critical. So we're deemed lowest. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about ethnic studies and its definitions a little bit. So obviously it's interdisciplinary and it's multidisciplinary. It combines poli-sci literature, race studies, obviously the humanities, but it presents them from the perspective of diverse communities. So for example, you're gonna get, if you have an anthropology class that's about Native Americans, you're probably gonna learn something drastically different than what Western curricula would prompt out. So there's obviously that factor that the literature and the perspective will just be different in total. There is a lot of sub ethnic studies. You know, when we talk about ethnic studies, that's really an umbrella term. I just wanted to point that out. So umbrella is all encompassing. It really pretty much extends to these disciplines, and this is really what they're called. So across colleges and universities, and also the K-12 system, it's really important that we understand that Chicano Latino students really do make up a huge percentage of students here in California. So you'll really see this in ethnic studies represented in Chicano Studies departments. That's really what you would call them. That's really where they're more prevalent. You know, just something to note, everyone here, it's really important that the history of ethnic studies kind of also have a California label, because it was born and bred here since its inception. So that's just very important. Also having the concept of Chicanismo here, about Mexican American presence here that predates the arrival of Anglo-Saxon settlers in the West, but also acknowledges that people were here also during that time period and throughout throughout the times where our border was open and there wasn't the restrictions that we see today. But it also talks about cultural autonomy in academia when it comes to Chicano studies. So this is a discipline that's very controlled by the students. Just wanted to note that even since its inception. So we need to think about ethnic studies in, well, the way we put, let's say you put on some glasses. If you put on sunglasses, the sun is not able to come in, and what you look at, it's different. The colors are different, right? As opposed to if you put on, more normal glasses, like say for reading, that the way you're able to, the lens will allow you to zoom in. So we just need to think about that when we talk about ethnic studies, there's different lenses that we look at it in. There's different glasses that we put on to view the world. So not just the world, but also people and how we look at people. Obviously, something that we talked about is intersectionality and how that plays a role. So for example, intersectionality really just means that we talk about, what identities do you take on as a person that really makes up your experience in the world and how you're treated. What's it called? So for example, if there is a lesbian Black woman in an interview and there is a white heterosexual male or someone that is non-binary, how does that affect, who's going to get the job? What are the systems of power going to say? Who's going to get the job? Is this person not going to get the job because they're non-binary? Is the person who is heterosexual going to get it? But when we think about it in ethnic studies, we need to think about this from a racial, cultural, and ethnic perspective. Race is determined by, well, we need to think about race as a social construction. So, we have the same DNA pattern in our blood. We're all humans. We all come from the same species. But really kind of looking at the world from that scientific end about how that's just what we learned. It's not really up to par with how ethnic studies function. So that's a major thing. It's also the transnational perspective. So when we think about these groups, even when we think about Asian American studies, since we do have a population of Filipino students in San Luis Obispo, it's, how is their immigrant background? Like are they able to speak in another language? How does that play a role? Their immigrant background. And how that plays a role into their lives. Also, when we talk about transnational, we really, since our proximity to Mexico, from San Luis Obispo, it's only a 6-hour drive to the Tijuana border. But there's a huge Hispanic population in San Luis Obispo County that does work the fields. So that's very important, and our service economy as well. So having like that perspective about, their immigrant experiences will also kind of give us some light. A little bit about the state curriculum and its challenges. I remember showing up to some meetings and, oh, sorry, I live right next to a hospital. What's it called? So there was a lot of challenges in the state curriculum. But something that we need to know is that these attacks on ethnic studies, it kind of mirrors that of the Arizona's attempted ban on Tucson High School's Mexican American Studies program. And this class was really open to anyone, any students, regardless of their background. It just wasn't for Mexican students. It was open to all, as every institution should allow everyone to take these courses. But something that really mirrored this was Arizona said, okay, we're not going to allow this because it's instilling racial solidarity among people. But California, similarly, they implemented a discrimination clause in the ethnic studies law that said that people cannot discriminate. So that just, and that's not to say that's not to say that, hey, don't abide by these rules, but it just really kind of set a precedent that, oh, ethnic studies is some way racist towards white people or Jewish people, but that wasn't the case at all. It was just people that just wanted to be able to restrict what was being taught in these classes. Also, the manipulation of robots, what's it called? Influencing the state curriculum, that was something huge. There was of unknown origin. There was just like a lot of things that, a lot of papers that were being sent over to the state curriculum, the California Department of Education. So a lot of replicas, a lot of, bots pretty much sending from unknown emails. So that really kind of tinted the system and what came out of that, So say there was one good comment, it would, double that, there would be a negative comment. So it just kind of goes to show like, okay, there's just like obviously some like cyber bot manipulation going on. Also, something that is the dimensions of ethnic studies, it's something really important that we understand that it's community and student driven. While a lot of times, strictly from the student perspective, teachers do try to take a lot of control on matters. It's also local. It has to be local. It has to represent everyone in the community. Also, ethnic studies does have an activist dimension about, criticizing the systems of power, about if you see something wrong with the world, you actively work to change it. So that doesn't make up ethnic studies in its entirety. It just has usually there'll be 2-to-1 lessons in classes that'll be implemented at, say a co-curricular that's optional, and they write a paragraph on it. So that really kind of just makes sure that you, in ethnic studies, when you take a course, you do something that is for your own personal enrichment, and if you want to. Also, ethnic studies, since its formation, has always had to resist to even exist and thrive in white supremacist spaces. So, there are some people out there in the world that believe that instruction and literature should be presented in English only. And that in itself, it's a racist idea. So ethnic studies has always had to exist, under pressure. A little bit about its revival. Obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement, the youth and the students were highly involved. That's really what made up primarily the people out in the streets, educated youth. Immigration issues of the time, since the 90s all the way till now, have been an extremely controversial issue. A lot of youth and immigration activists, believe that, there should be citizenship for DACA and DREAMER recipients in California and across the nation. Obviously, a lot of anti-racist efforts. The push with ethnic studies wouldn't have been possible without the Black Lives Matter movement. And this awakening of the literature that everyone was having, and also really important to the young people here and everyone here as well, was you saw anti-racist efforts kind of spill onto social media more. By this, if someone could go ahead and kind of say if they saw anything, something that stood out during this time, like if you've seen anything social justice related or anything of that sort, or go ahead, I guess, if you also want to share with me on that. I'll be monitoring chat. Or if you've read a book or something that's just caught your mind recently on that end, or if you participated in it. A little bit about the challenges. Obviously, we saw in the last days of the Trump presidency, there was a declaration to restore quote unquote patriotic education. But what this did was it increased the censorship of ideas and anti-racist or race-related books. And the curriculum started to be banned across the United States. But on the local level, this really came really close to us. Obviously CRT the local bands at Paso Robles board banned CRT. They were actually on Fox News. So, you know, and it's really kind of, we need to think about how local school boards are nonpartisan boards, and they shouldn't inherently act political in this regard. But another thing, it's the local conspiracy theories linked to alt-right groups here in San Luis Obispo County and in the United States, and this is really rampant in the Southwest. But you know, conspiracy theorists and their ideas have just leaked onto social media, and you know, online radicalization has become a thing. And these are the realities that we're having to face as young people, as any person as well. We're constantly always on our phones. A lot of our lives are lived on our phones. Also, the challenges have been here in ethnic studies was that the students and institutions, they have a very tense relationship in shared governance, you know, sometimes even despite the California Ed Code. So the laws that govern how decisions are made in the colleges, that allow students to sit on hiring committees, to exercise, you know, their student voice. You know, in some states like Texas, they don't exist. So that's why I tell students, you know, you need to get involved. You know, you have a voice by law. So that's very important to know, even in high schools. And, you know, obviously we have one of our panelists here, Jocelyn Alvarado, who has been a student that has participated on that ordeal in Paso Robles High School, taking Mr. Land's class. And that hasn't been easy. You know, Cuesta College also has a dual enrollment program, a dual enrollment contract with Paso Robles High School. So, you know, making sure that faculty are able to teach freely and students to engage, you know, even if, you know, it's the existence of it alone, you know, you don't have to agree with it, you don't have to like it, but it's about wanting to learn, you know. You know, you can love it, hate it, but, you know, the exchange of ideas is important. What can I do? First of all, countering the counter facts. You know, race predates critical thought. That should always be something. CRT is not Marxist. You know, there's actually a lot of elements that are taught in the Mexican American Studies section of ethnic studies that does have a lot of Catholic liberation, anti-Marxist philosophy. So making sure that people know, hey, CRT is not Marxist. You know, you need to get your facts straight. It usually comes from uneducated people that don't understand the ideological spectrum and the origins of CRT. What can we do? It's really simple in today's day and age, you know, follow and share anti-racist posts on social media, you know, take an ethnic studies course, you know, here at Cuesta College, or attend a teach-in, you know, support fundraisers and donate to MEChA, donate to BSU, donate to LGBTQ clubs, student clubs, you know, buy their food when they have fundraisers. You know, just give your support out as people in the community to younger people. You know, there's nothing better than when we remember, it's everyone here, I'm pretty sure, fundraisers, you know, having to go to a field trip or something like that. I think that's really important. And that really kind of concludes really what I have to say. Is there any questions? I know that I was probably blabbling on for a minute. What's it called? Is there any questions? If you feel, if you want us to answer any of your questions, please go ahead and give it on the, throw this down on the chat box. We're more than likely to hear it and probably try and answer it. So I'm gonna stop the screen share and I'm gonna introduce our next panelist here for the student workshop. Ms. Jocelyn Alvarado, she is a senior at Paso Robles High School, and it was in the ethnic studies course. So Ms. Alvarado, please go ahead and take it off.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn. As Jesus said, I am a senior at Paso High School, and I am taking my uh, first ever, I guess, ethnic studies course and the high school's first ethnic studies course as well. So it's been really exciting. It's been really fun, and it's been overall really amazing. The amount of activism that we have had on our campus has been just tremendously like amazing, from either side. Um, so I think, kind of like Jesus was saying, just like ethnic studies being there as a course, as an option for students is so important because, I feel like ethnic studies has changed my life. Absolutely. I only wanted to major in education and now I want to major in ethnic studies as well, which is amazing. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or anything whatsoever, please let me know. If anyone wants to hear about any events or activism that I have done or anyone or anything really.
We do have Dr. Ren that would like to ask, has her hand raised. Dr. Ren, please go ahead and ask Jocelyn a question.
Okay, full disclosure, I'm like a proud mom because Jocelyn is one of my current students and Jesus is a student who taught me more than I could ever learn out of a book. So I'm so proud of both of them. But I have been, from the moment I met Jocelyn and her colleagues at Paso Robles High, I've been completely in awe of the way that you all have stepped up and just dealt with unpleasant things, but also building in community events to get the community to come together. And I guess, like, as an adult who, as a kid, would never, as a high school student, would never have had the guts to do what you all have done. Can you share with us a little bit about how you've brought together these events? For example, the situation at maybe about the hate crime or something that's more positive, the Black History Month celebrations. Just, can you tell us, like, what does it take to do that, and how has ethnic studies supported you in doing those things?
I feel like it has to do with frustration. I've had a bunch of frustration within my own school, like not being represented and not having my peers being represented. And like our frustrations combined just made such a positive energy to just want to change for those peers who might see the same thing but don't really want to talk about it, or who might just be scared of it and all. So I think that frustration and that, I guess, determination to change our campus for the better, I think that's really what helped us a lot. I know I know a lot of my own peers have had those frustrations, and they've taken that anger and they made it into something more positive to change not only for themselves but for future generations to come. So I think that's something very important that helped me and my peers to create this change, start talking, start having these conversations and these discussions. And ethnic studies, I always talk about it like, you're getting knowledge, but it's like, what are you going to do with the knowledge is always my question. What can I do with this knowledge that I have been provided? So I always just try to see if I can help other people or help people that look like me and just like represent ourselves a little bit more within our campus. But ethnic studies has helped me tremendously by making connections, making just positive change within my own life and within my own campus. I think that's what it has done, and it just has sparked a bunch of other students to do the same thing. So yeah.
Wow, thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you for that response. You're very brave. And absolutely, there's a lot of times where there's a lot of frustration involved. Definitely. What's it called? Jocelyn, there is another question here. It says by Deborah, is there a simple explanation why white people should not fear an ethnic studies or ban CRT?
I feel like the explanation's a little bit complex, I guess. I feel like personally, I feel like my other peers shouldn't fear a course like this or a topic like topics like these, because it's not only just representing myself or my other peers, but it's representing like a whole bunch of other people that we don't know about or we don't talk about within a regular course. And it's not only just educational for me as a person of color, it's educational for everyone. And it's information that I feel like it is important to know about because it's been silent for so long. So I feel like it's not something that's supposed to be scary, because it's not just about, I guess, silencing those peers, but it's kind of like passing the mic over to those peers, giving them the chance to, I guess, shine, because
Right.
we've always had this master narrative of, this one certain dominant group of always shining. So it's kind of like giving a little bit back, just a tiny bit back, just to, I guess, to let them shine as well. But it doesn't mean that we're, superior, or inferior in any way, So I feel like it's just something that's for those students to feel heard and seen.
Wow, thank you, Jocelyn,
Thank you.
for that. And
Yeah,
if I
thank you
could,
for sharing. Yeah, if I may.
go ahead, yes, Mar.
So I'm an Asian. So way back in my homeland, there's a saying. It's called, "Ang hindi lumingon sa pinanggalingan, hindi makakarating sa paroroonan." Meaning, he who does not look back to the origin will not reach the destination. So that's a saying. That's a saying that goes way back in my homeland, which I think will kind of correlates with why we have to study, why we have to learn ethnic studies, because like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Why I feel this way, and what is my role in the community? Like, there's so much things that happened in the past that it until now that time doesn't heal, that there are some wounds that won't mend, but unless, so we have to face it. So the only thing that we have to solve the future issues, or the like, there's an issue, but we just, people tend to like pretend that there's nothing, but there is something like that. So we just have to study about it, figure out, dig more, dig deeper, in order for us to understand what we are why we are feeling this way. It's been couple of years, hundreds of years or whatsoever, and yet why do we feel this way? Because it wasn't addressed before, and up to now they still wasn't addressing it, and so we have to yeah. So I think that's the, and the question is, it says that why give example reason, why, yeah, where is that, why, it seems something like fear, that why it should not be fear, right?
Yeah, so it was talking about, is there an example why white people should not fear ethnic studies / quote unquote ban CRT?
I take it as like a deeper question, like fear of what? Like fear of studying it. Are they fear of going to be the outcome, or of the ethnic studies? Or, because if so, there's nothing really to fear, because because ethnic studies is a way to reconcile whatever is the misunderstanding in the
Thank
past.
you. Thank you for that, Ms.
Thank you.
Ladlo, for that, for your opinions and your insights. And if I could answer that, Deborah, I would just like to say that there is nothing to fear, you know? It's not just making it known that it's not about hating white people. It's not about being, you know, feeling superior or anything of the sort. It's just about feeling represented, and, you know, and the history books represent, you know, groups such as Mexican Americans and our contributions here, Asians' contributions, you know, natives' contributions, and also African American contributions. You know, I think that's really something to understand. Was a lot of ethnic studies in its history, it's really patriotic to its core. You know, I think something that really is important is the American ordeals of freedom and democracy. And a lot of people prior to the civil rights movement, after World War II, were drafted in mass numbers, you know, that they saw what was going on in Germany, and they said, hey, we want a society that is equal, that embraces us all regardless of our background. So, you know, it's like there's plenty of classes, you know, history, civics, all throughout your education. We shouldn't fear or have any issues with 2 or 3 courses offered throughout high school. If anything, it would really stimulate a lot of scholarly activity in students to, you know, expand their knowledge base. You know, Europe is very internationalized, you know, in their education system. We're lacking behind a lot of developing countries, and it's because we need to address these inequalities. And an ethnic studies course is something that could be a start. We do have something here in the chat. Jocelyn, have you seen a change in other students' behaviors that are not ethnic after taking that course? Sydney, if you can feel free to kind of go ahead and unmute yourself and kind of further explain that question if you'd like.
Hi, yeah. So I guess I was just curious, like, you know, students who are Caucasian and white and did not have the knowledge of, you know, where these other students were coming from and what they had dealt with, who took the class. Did you hear like new questions from them? Were they more inclined to ask questions and become like closer with you and evolved? Sorry, I'm just kind of hopping in on.
Yeah, so I've had, you know, some peers who are, you know, who are white and who have, honestly, I feel like have seen some changes within them. You know, I feel like they're more supportive in a sense. They are very supportive and they want to hear everything, you know. They love to just, you know, I've had a bunch of my peers who just like want to learn more, like a sponge, you know, just soak in more information and then just support, you know, those groups or these clubs that have been making change within our own campus. But I feel more closer, you know, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I feel like they have been having, you know, they have been trying to make that effort of, you know, kind of listening and seeing that representation within our own course. And a bunch of them, you know, like hop into the conversation too. And a lot of them have very good points about some topics that we talk about. You know, we have different units of different ethnicities, and you know, we have a great conversation within a whole class. And I feel like it has changed a lot of people, you know, in that class. I've met so many people who are like, yeah, well, after I've taken a semester of this course, I want to major in it. And I'm like, whoa, me too, you know. So it's kind of like, it's crazy to see that, you know, in such little time that so much change can happen. So I feel like there has been a profound change within not just those students who haven't been represented, but those who have always been in the, I guess, dominant group as well.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for that really good response. I could definitely say the same thing, Jocelyn. And it's just really good to see, you know, other students who are white, you know, understand a little bit more in that perspective. And it really builds that community. Would say, Jocelyn, can you talk about the baile that y'all had, that MEChA sponsored, that was very well publicized on social media, because I saw all the way over here in Texas?
Of course, I would love to talk about the baile. So the baile was last weekend. I think it was last weekend. No, the week before that, on the 19th. And we have had so many great responses. I mean, it's been amazing. So it all started from a Hispanic Heritage Month like luncheon celebration. And we just literally brought a speaker and a playlist and brought some, you know, prepackaged like goodies, and kind of just took that and you know, just kind of represented, you know. And so we put a bunch of Spanish music, and it got such a big buzz. After lunch, I had people coming up to me like saying, "Oh my God, you need to make something like this, but bigger. Like, you got to do this. Like, this was so cool," because they've never seen themselves represented at the school. So they thought it was just amazing. And I thought, okay, well, we got to do something. So the president of ACT Club kind of was like, "Hey, do you guys think we can, you know, you guys are down to do something bigger, like a baile or something?" We're like, "Absolutely." And all of us just got so pumped. But, you know, we never thought it would be a reality until she, you know, our president came, like the president came back and was like, "Well, we got approved." And so, you know, we got everything just rolling after that. We started planning, like, what do we want to do, and how do we represent these students who have been silenced for so long, who are the majority population at their own school, who have been just ignored, I guess, in a sense ignored, or have not been like heard or seen. So we kind of planned a whole bunch of stuff, and then it was like a whole process, and it was just so unique because you just saw people from every single background come together to put up this amazing dance for our Latino students, and it was just incredible. I mean, I had so much fun, and I had other peers telling me like, "We got to do this next year. We got to do this next year." And I'm like, "Well, you guys got to do this because I want to be gone, so I better see it." You know? So it was like, it was amazing. It was like one of the best events I've had at the high school. And it's crazy to like, to see that change that, you know, our administrators and our staff and our teachers were so willing to make. So I felt like that was like just an event that was just awesome for everyone.
Wow, thank you, Jocelyn, for that. I kind of wanted to ask a question just kind of to follow up on that. When you said that, you know, this had never happened before, why do you think that this events like this that are inherently, you know, multicultural, quote unquote, or, you know, very Mexicano in nature, can you kind of give your comments on that or any thoughts?
I feel like, you know, I talked to my brother who had also have gone to that, who has been to the high school, you know, and graduated. And, you know, I kind of talked to him about it, and he was like, "Well, when we were there, we had people pushing for it too." I feel like this year, for some reason, there's like something in the air on the campus that just has made our staff kind of like open up more to the idea of having these events happen. But I feel like before, I think it was because it was a little, I don't know, people might have found it more, how would I word this? I feel like people would have found it, I guess, excluding other people or like other groups. But I think they kind of like heard us out and just been like, "Okay, well, it's not that at all." And I feel like because they saw what we did at lunch, like that event that we did at lunch, they saw how all of us students were unified, that they were like, well, maybe we should do something bigger, you know? And we would always point out the fact that our campus is 51% Latino, and yet we weren't represented. And I feel like that kind of might have made them change their minds. But I feel like before, I think it was just not enough push, you know, for it. I feel like there was an effort too, but there just wasn't enough. And I feel like this generation has been, you know, really pushing it, you know, and really has been trying to get results back, you know. I feel like, I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah.
And it absolutely did, Jocelyn. You know, and I'm glad that that is a thing. And I just want us to kind of highlight this second when, you know, it's a simple dance, you know, it's, you know, and I think we need to have the conversation, you know, it's sometimes, you know, as bilingual speakers, you know, there is that shame placed on, you know, playing your music in Spanish, you know, and about how that, you know, might not make you quote unquote an American, and that paradigm. Jocelyn, we have another question. It says, Jesus, but you feel free to answer it and tackle it however you can or want. This is just a general question. Do you think today's socioeconomic and epistemologies succeed in STEM-related fields in comparison to other countries such as Singapore, Germany, or even Algeria, where their graduation rates exceeds the US? What does that mean for culture? Does it intertwine? I'll go ahead and tackle this one for a second. Hi, Jose. Thank you so much for joining us. Jose is joining us from the University of Texas at Austin. So thank you for being here today, Jose. Well, something that I just like to say, Jose, is there is, you know, definitely a very big equity gap in especially Latinos' attainment in the STEM fields, you know, and that just kind of, when I talked about in my slide earlier about how some students are not placed into college track mathematics courses and into remedial courses. So I think that that's something that we need to take into mind and into consideration. But also, I wanted to point to answer that question, Jose. I'm gonna put in the chat the article name that will help you kind of understand a little bit about differences with Germany and the United States and their education system, and how it's just different, how there's more flexibility here in the United States. Obviously, children from poor backgrounds and households, they're trapped in this this socio-educational disadvantage from early on. Obviously, the legacy of racial discrimination here in this country, low teacher pay, and large class sizes. You know, and I think something kind of taking it a little bit back to local level, a lot of students from Paso Robles High School District are failing in math, you know, and Paso Robles has a very good science program. So it shows the inequities, you know, hey, you know, like this is a barrier, you know. A lot of students in the county, they want to go to Cal Poly, and sometimes math requirements or biology requirements are something that really hinders them. And obviously, you know, so it's about combating this culture of, you know, minorities are inferior in the mathematics or in the sciences, Jose. So I think it's changing our viewpoint on the matter, you know, and we need to break the, you know, provide more tutoring. So I guess that's where it intertwines. Jocelyn, if you'd like to address some of that, if you'd like.
I think, you hit the mark. I think it is that. And also, I feel like for, I mean, here at least, because in Paso we have like a huge majority of Latinos here. And I feel like kind of like how Jesus was saying of kind of like representation within, those math kind of courses within STEM. It's not really represented as much, I don't, sometimes I don't see myself within those courses, so I'm not really drawn to it. So I feel like that might be a reason why as well. But I don't know. I feel like that's what it is, just a representation of, trying to have those who look like you being in those field and having those careers really do benefit you, because then you'd be like, okay, well, I can do that if she can do that, like, it's kind of like that mentality. And also I've heard horrible stories of sometimes students just being discouraged from staff members of not pursuing a school or not pursuing into these careers because it might be too hard for them because of their own background. And it doesn't have to do anything related with grades or anything like that, just simply because they are Hispanic or because they come from a different background. So I feel like that as well might discourage students here at Paso to go into STEM. But those who do go into STEM, I always support them and encourage them and be like, yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. My best friend's going into STEM and I'm like, yes, because she's Latina too. And I'm like, you're doing something really simple but it's bringing so much change within other people's lives as well. So I feel like that as well has to do with a lot of minorities not wanting to go into these I guess careers. So that's pretty much what I had to say.
Thank you so much for that insight, Jocelyn. We are having some overwhelmingly supportive comments here in this chat box. So we do have to, in 51 seconds, we do have to go to the main room. I just like to say to everyone, thank you so much for deciding to join us in the Student Activism and Ethnic Studies workshop with myself and Ms. Alvarado from Paso Robles High School, and most likely Dr. Alvarado in a few years, and everyone here today from Cuesta College and our members of the community. Thank you so much for attending, and this will be available to y'all's in the recordings for your own personal enrichment. Thank you, Mr. Betancourt, my tutor.
So I linked something in the chat. It's just an articles of the LA Times, just so you can all read that.